How's it going, guys? My name is Zach with the Movie Castle, and today we're going to be taking a look at Trancers from 1984. This was produced and directed by Charles Band. Charles Band, you guys probably know as the founder of Full Moon Features. This was actually made in his previous company, Empire Pictures, but when that ended and he started Full Moon, this was one that he was able to keep the rights to. So this kind of retroactively became a Full Moon movie, and of course, all the sequels would be Full Moon, which I think they made like 6 or 7 of them. So yeah, this is one of the bigger Full Moon franchises. This movie stars Tim Thomerson, who you guys know as Dollman as well. That's really cool to get multiple classic Full Moon roles. Also, the female lead of this movie is Helen Hunt before she was famous. That's super cool. And rounding out the cast, we have Michael Stefani and Art LaFleur. And of course, we're covering this movie right now because it's a Christmas movie. Well, loosely, kind of. The movie takes place on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, and we even get a scene at a Santa photo op, and a few other Christmas references. Honestly, I wish they had pushed the Christmas element further, but it's enough for me to cover it in December. And hey, if the internet's tired of arguing about Die Hard, we can argue if Trancers is a Christmas movie or not. But all that aside, the movie itself is pretty fun. Obviously, this is a lot lower budget than something like Blade Runner or The Terminator, but you can tell it was kind of inspired by those movies, and it really is cool to see someone trying to do that, even if it has to be on a smaller scale. Really though, it does punch a lot above its weight. We do get prolonged sections in the future, and we get some really cool gags like him coming out of the water after scuba diving in Los Angeles, the city, after it fell in the big earthquake. And other cool future sets like a future diner or a future government building. There is some cool design, again pushing a little bit farther than you think it would be able to. The whole thing with the Trancers and going down the line and the future stuff, we really do build out a nice fleshed out little world, and we get some fun characters. Tim Thomerson and Helen Hunt are really good leads in this movie, really charismatic, and we do get a good bit of humor between the two of them. He's kind of a fish out of water being a cop from the future, and she's the girl that knows all about this place and is kind of forced to lead him around. There's some good jokes and it keeps the movie lively. Him being called Jack Death and then being obsessed with the TV show Peter Gunn, and making jokes about how they both share weird names but they both are really into being cops. Like I said, a good bit of life and charisma. Now I will say this movie is by no means 100% polished, and I do want to say when I take a deeper dive in a moment, I am going to be talking about a lot of logical flaws here. And yeah, that is one thing that does get me with this movie, but I do want to say, and I want to reiterate it right off the bat, I in general do really like this movie, but it definitely has problems. And I guess without further ado, let's get into that. I'm not going to do any major spoilers, but I do want to talk briefly about the plot, say my piece on a few plot points, and do primarily setup work. So what's the movie about? Well, we open up with Jack Death, 300 years in the future, and he's a cop. He's hunting down these things called Trancers. Basically, the bad guy in this film, Whistler, has the ability to control the weak-minded, and the weak-minded they call squids, and they kind of become like zombies. And like zombies, Trancers are basically dead, so if you find one, go ahead and take it out. And yeah, okay, a few things here. First of all, it's a little weird that the franchise gets its name from kind of a low-level villain. I mean, that would kind of be like if Star Wars was called Stormtroopers, but whatever. I'll have to see how they balance that title out in the sequels. I haven't seen the sequels yet. But also Jack Death in his trench coat, and he has to go and find these people that look like normal people, but are secretly something else and then eliminate them. Yeah, that is a very direct Blade Runner feel, but you know, whatever, it's cool. After a fight with a Trancer that he wasn't really supposed to be in, Jack decides to leave the Force, and then immediately they go and beg to have him back. It's a little bit of whiplash, you know, I'm leaving, and then the very next scene is, we need you back. But it turns out that Whistler, the big bad guy who they thought was dead and he thought he was just cleaning up random remaining Trancers, no, he's alive and he went down the line, which is basically where you send your consciousness into the body of one of your ancestors and you kind of take him over. So Whistler is in the 1980s. And they figured this out when one of the 3 council members just disappeared. It turns out Whistler in the 80s killed one of his ancestors for revenge, and now he's going after the remaining 2 council members. And yeah, you know, I said there was logic problems. If you killed someone's ancestor in the past, then yeah, they would disappear, but also a spiderwebbing network of a bunch of other ancestors would disappear, not just the one guy. And also, they wouldn't just be empty, like if he was never born, everyone around them still remembers him, and they just never filled the seat because he was never born. Really, it would just shift to a different person and no one would be the wiser, but whatever, try not to think too much about it. I'm sure there's some reason, and maybe they explain it in the sequels. But it turns out that Jack Death, as well as the other 2 council members, all had ancestors living in LA back in the 80s. So they can send Jack Death down the line into the body of his ancestor, and he has to go find the ancestors of the other 2 and keep them safe so that the future government leaders don't get disappeared from time. They also have this ability to send a box directly into the past. It's a little bit weird, like the humans they can only send through their ancestors, but we can still get a few gadgets back through the past. I guess they could only make a box so big, not one big enough to fit a human. Yeah, I don't know. But amongst his gadgets, he has the long second watch, which is a watch that if he pushes it, 1 second will pass for everyone else, but 10 seconds will pass for him. Although really in the movie, it's like a minute and a half, I think. Whatever. He has a special slow-mo watch, which is clearly a Chekhov's gun, and we're just waiting for the cool sequence where he uses it. They send him down the line and he wakes up in the past, in the body of his ancestor who was a reporter. And yeah, the way this is set up, they're screwing this guy over. His ancestor's life is just gonna get plowed over and no one really cares. A bit of a messy plot element if you care for this guy. Maybe they should have made his ancestor a bit of a jerk so he didn't care or something. I don't know. But his ancestor was having a one-night stand with Helen Hunt. So we get, of course, her reacting to him doing all this weird stuff and not understanding the present, but he realizes that because Helen Hunt is savvy to this time period, he can use her to find the ancestors and also stop Whistler, so he has to drag her onto this quest. And of course, it's Christmas time, so she's wanting to get to her job as a photographer at the mall taking pictures of kids with Santa, and it does lead to a fun sequence. You know Jack Death is going to have to fight Santa Claus. I absolutely love it. And again, I do wish they had pushed the Christmas element more. Helen Hunt unfortunately changes out of her Christmas outfit. It'd be super fun if she was stuck running around in that the whole time. And there's only a couple other references to Christmas. Like, for real, one of the ancestors of the congressperson is a down-on-his-luck homeless guy, but you know his life's going to change in some way because he hasn't had his kid yet. And that could have been a really cool, like, It's a Wonderful Life moment if we fleshed it out and made it more Christmassy. As it stands, he's a fun enough character, but I do see the potential if we leaned harder into Christmas. But as I said, the 2 leads have good rapport. They do a good job keeping the movie going and giving us some cool little action sequences. Whistler's ancestor is, of course, one of the police lieutenants, so now the police are all chasing them around. And the people in the future have limited knowledge as to where their ancestors were or what they were doing, so they have to do a bit of detective work. and every now and then take breaks to go to LA punk clubs, a little bit reminiscent of the club in Terminator. But overall, like I said, this movie does have a really good vibe to it. It's much lower budget than Blade Runner or Terminator, but still tends to pull off quite a lot. It's not the biggest, best sci-fi ever or anything, but it's one that has a cult following and has a bunch of sequels, and overall is just a really fun time. If you like sci-fi like those other two movies I mentioned and want a good little recommendation, this is definitely a fun movie, and I'd say check it out. As I said at the top, I haven't seen any of the sequels yet. I do have part 2 on the shelf, and I'll be trying to track down the other ones. I'm curious where this franchise goes from here. Definitely a lot of story potential in this world, and I am looking forward to seeing more of it. Anyway, to everyone who's watched so far, thank you for watching. To everyone who's liked and subscribed, thank you. You really are helping the channel out. I'll leave a relevant playlist on the bottom. This should be my full moon playlist. If you guys want to see me talk about more movies kind of like this, feel free to click right here and see more. Anyway, have a good day. I'll see you guys again very, very soon. Playlist here. Have a good day now.